Hi everyone, we'll just let all attendees sign in and then we'll make a start. Hey, hi everyone and welcome to our BGL monthly webinar. This is our second one for October. So welcome and hopefully you get a lot out of it as per normal. In terms of housekeeping, today's session will be recorded and is saved on our YouTube channel. All attendees and anyone who registered will be emailed a link to today's recording. So if you do need to step out in time or would like to share it with your colleagues, please know that you'll receive that. Any questions you do have, please enter them into the Q&A panel. We've got a few of the BGL team members that have signed in and ready to answer any questions you do have. And of course, Aaron and myself will cover questions there at the end. So Aaron, welcome to another monthly update.
Thank you, Jeevan. I was going back and having a look at some of the topics I've covered. It's been a somewhat quietish month or so since we've caught up. And yeah, I was kind of surprised how long I've been doing this for too, actually. So there's been a lot going on though, fair to say.
No, it's kind of one of those things where it's been a busy year, but not a progressive year in terms of, I guess, legislation changes, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking on the Division 296 because it's getting right to the pointy end here. So I wanted to give people a bit of an update as to where that's at and yeah, the realities of whether this is actually going to become law or not.
Sounds good. So as per normal, I'll give a quick BGL update. Aaron will cover, I guess, what's happening there in terms of legislation and some things that are occurring or changing with Smarter SMSF. And then any questions you have for Aaron or myself, please enter them into the Q&A panel and we're happy to cover at the end. Okay, let's get into it. So this month's been a quieter month from a BGL perspective. A lot of the changes we have made are sort of minor improvements. I'm not going to cover a lot of those. I'm just going to cover sort of the major changes that have taken place. Our next update, which is being released, will be there on the 14th of November. So let's get into it. So first one released in our last update, there is a transaction recode. So the existing transaction recode function we have was developed several years ago. And the initial plans with that was to extend it out and to include basically every single transaction type that existed within Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360. That project was put on hold at that point in time and was never really picked up again. So now that our team has the capacity, now been working away and actually rebuilt the transaction recode functions there from scratch. So at the moment, it still has a limited range in terms of the transactions, but we're going to continue working through. We're not going to finish now until that all transaction types are covered and will just be obviously released out in stages. If you'd like access to this, it is in a closed beta at the moment. So the email address you see down the bottom of your screen there, sf360beta@bglcorp.com.au. That email address is also in the new features release notes. So you'll be able to find that there in the product as well. So let's jump into it and have a look. So across here into Simple Fund 360. So first of all, I mentioned obviously with the release notes, obviously the modal window that gets displayed every time we release an update, you'll be able to view the release notes there. For any reason, if you ever need those again, if you click there on the help menu and then on new features, you'll be able to see all the release notes that we have. And as I mentioned, in there, you'll be able to see the email address that we do have there as well. Okay, let's go across and have a look at a couple of different scenarios here with the transaction recode function. So my basic example that we're going to cover first of all. So you can see here for this particular fund, I've got a whole bunch of different account fees here, which are being coded to administration costs. So in my case, I want to move these across to the bank charges account and move them accordingly. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. And obviously, one way that could be done is selecting all the existing transactions here, clicking unmatch, and that will obviously remove any of the existing transaction matching that has taken place and reverted that back to its previous state, and then you could create a new rule. So that obviously applies if the transaction has come in via data feed. Now the transaction recode will work regardless of whether the transaction has come in via data feed or has been manually entered in. So it's much more powerful in terms of obviously going through and applying that. When you do have access, you'll see the second option under on top of the menu there that says transaction recode new. So able to click on that and we'll start through moving. So first of all, you just select actually I'll go back up top here. There's some helpful information up top and it lets you cover here what transaction types are supported and which ones are still coming soon. So as I said, everything that is on this list that you can see there on screen will be covered in a future update and we'll just be releasing that in stages. So transaction recode, let's go across and move these accordingly. So you'll need to select, okay, which account you'd like to move the transactions from. And then it'll give you this prompt. So would you like to move everything just in the current financial year, or would you like to move everything including historical transactions? So everything takes place. So if you do select no, you will need to input obviously the date range which does take place, or you can go through and select individual transactions down below if it is just selective transactions you'd like to move between account codes. Next step is that going through and actually selecting which transaction, actually I'll go and select all, which transactions you'd like to actually, so which account you'd like to actually move that to. So I can go through here and select here under bank charges. So you can see it there on screen. It's going to move them there from account 302 through to 315. It'll give me a warning here that it's going to move everything there across that, and I click OK. Okay, so that'll take place. And obviously, depending on the number of transactions that you do have, it will obviously influence how long this process will take. And we'll have to go through and update those accordingly and come through. Now, as you can see there on screen, what will actually display there is the history of what's actually taken place there accordingly. So you'll be able to see every single transaction recode which has been performed there going through. So another one we could do is actually, let's go through another example here of actually moving an investment one. So let's go through and I'll select here that I'm going to move, so my, in this case, an ETF. So for this particular ETF, I'm going to move it from 782 and let's move it to an account which I've created before, which is a new one, which is under exchange traded funds. So again, similar basis, it's going to go through, look at those particular accounts. It'll give me a warning here of what the information is going to move across. So obviously I'm going to go through that detail here during the webinar, but all that relevant details, again, it'll go through and actually process that move everything across, move the relevant linked accounts, and then that will obviously take effect and you will see that history come up as well. So you can see now that everything has been moved across and the relevant information, links, whatever it might be, have been updated there as well. So as I mentioned, please email that email address down at the bottom of the screen there if you would like access or early access to this feature, and our team can provide that to you. Okay, so next one there is a Macquarie account opening. So we did cover this in the previous webinar, but I wanted to sort of give attention to it because it did raise a lot of questions afterwards as well. So what we've actually done is established a connection there with Macquarie for, I guess, existing funds that would like to open a new bank account, or whether it's a new SMSF that's been created and you'd like to open a bank account for that. So an example, giving Aaron a plug there, you've gone and established a new SMSF using Smarter SMSF platform that's been inserted into Simple Fund 360. You could then go through and straight away open a bank account automatically there using this particular service.
Yeah, and Jeevan, I was just about to say that that is in essence what that workflow ultimately looks like, because you might set up the company. So on Smarter SMSF, for example, you can push that information and get that automatically set up into CAS. We then have a workflow that enables you to use that data to then set up your new fund. Again, pushes all that information in and gets it set up in Simple Fund 360 for you. Tidy up the bits that maybe not are incorporated in that original document application. Do your ABN and TFN, and whilst you're doing all that process as well, you can then naturally go and use all that data again to do the Macquarie account. So it just enables you to kind of take additional steps in what is a workflow around the establishment of a new SMSF.
And the good thing is it avoids any rekeying of data, and it's a pretty seamless
Absolutely.
process. So, okay, so to find this option, you find it there on the Connect menu, and then Connections. Okay, and the very top one there you'll see is Open New Macquarie Accounts. So we can go through and click on that. So as you can see, most of the information it's provided in the background through it to Macquarie. So it's actually using a direct API connection and providing the information there. And it's asking, would you like to open a linked accelerated account, which is Macquarie's high interest savings account, and it'll automatically do that for you. The trustee type will pre-fill automatically, and you just need to select who the primary contact is. So this is really who's going to be emailed and receive the information through there with Macquarie. So you'll click there, submit and resume via email. I think because I've got a plus symbol there in my my email address, it's going to fail. You have to push that through, and what it will do, if I correct that up. I think it's still plus, yeah. So obviously with a valid email address, what that'll do at that same time, it'll connect through to Macquarie. It'll then email back directly to the trustees, allowing them to continue the form. They'll still need to perform their KYC and AML checks through Macquarie before the account's officially established. But what will also take place here on screen, it'll automatically via Macquarie is return the BSB and account number directly to you on screen, and at the same time automatically establish a data feed where you don't need to actually complete an authority form. So the benefits there is obviously no data needs to be rekeyed. It's automatically created in the background, and obviously a data feed is automatically created at the same point in time. So it does have some advantages from an administration point of view from that perspective. Okay, so next change we've got here is under the report screen. So here on the report screen, one sort of major request here is around the unrealized gains report, is the ability to filter for particular accounts. So go across there into reports, and I'll search here for the unrealized gain report detail. Okay, so there under settings, you now have the ability to filter for particular ones. I'm just going to select, say, BHP. This one's got. Okay, and when we create that particular report, you'll see now rather than displaying all investments, it's just displaying the ones which have been created there. So this was something that was requested in terms of, sort of, I guess, performing analysis there on a particular investment. Okay, so the next two changes I'm going to show aren't really new changes, but they're more just best practice. So these were things that were released over the last 12 months, but there's something more relevant as we're now getting into the season where a lot of SMSF returns are being completed and sent off to audit. So the first one is a refresher there around annual tax statements. So let's go through the relevant things there around the distribution tax automation screen. Okay, so I'm just going to change the fund I'm working on. Okay, so for anyone who hasn't used this screen before, this can be found under the compliance menu there, distribution tax automation. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that this screen can be utilized. So first of all, we crowdsource data, and that data can be used to pre-fill the tax components through into the transaction screen. So where the tax components are available, you'll see the little lightning symbol there on the left-hand side, and that lets you know that we have the system data, and you can go through into that and automatically generate the tax components based on the units on hand during the financial year. So it will take in consideration any purchases, disposals during the year that do take place, and you can go through and automatically process that. If you'd like to know which investments or which either managed funds, ETFs, unlisted trusts, which are supported by this, there's that option, a button there, supported securities, and this will provide a list of every single APR code or ASX code which is supported in terms of that system data. The other option we've added there is the ability to extract the annual tax data via our Smart Doc screen. So this can be done in a couple of different ways. So first of all, you can upload the PDFs in prior to actually coming to this screen, in which case I've already done that, and you can see the little SD icon there because it's actually linked it there across. If you haven't done that, if you hover over the actual row, so you can see in this case I've only got one investment, but I can hover over that and I can click there on upload documents. I can go through and upload it here real time, and it will go through and automatically process that. That'll probably take 30 seconds to a minute to actually read the document and extract the components. So it really depends on how many different components are filled there within the actual annual tax statement and the format of the annual tax statement as well. But once you've done that, you'll see there's an option there to extract from PDF. Actually, I'll go back one step. You've got an option here to review. So this is where you uploaded multiple statements and you want to go through and obviously classify which statement belongs to which particular investments. So you can see this case, mine are okay because I've only got one investment and it's quite simple. So you can go through and classify that if you've pre-uploaded the documents and you want to make sure they're correctly allocated to the correct investment. Under here, I can actually go through now and extract from PDF. And what you'll see here is on screen, and if I make that a little bit bigger, on screen, what it's actually going to do is extract the tax components you see there on the left-hand side, and then automatically pre-fill the relevant components there on the right-hand side, as you see. So it actually avoids having to manually key in any actual statements and go through and actually process those. So once that's all been done, I can just click on generate and mark as reviewed. And that'll automatically then mark it as reviewed and actually post that through to the transaction screen. What we also added a while back too was the ability to actually go through and post accrual transactions. So very similar for this one here, I can click on the button up top there, which is post accruals. And what this will actually go through and do is actually look at what's the difference between the net cash distribution and the amount actually posted to the ledger, and are they equal or not. So if there is a difference between those, you can actually then post a transaction, which will post one side to the income account in terms of the distributions received account, and actually then 61800 distributions receivable account. So that'll just be both posted straight through into the ledger. So if I go here into the transaction screen, okay, filter here for actually transactions. You can see the two posted there. The second from the top is the one into actually the receivable transaction, and then the other one in terms of the actual tax components entered through that. Oops, sorry, went through incorrectly. So the actual accrual transaction posted there, and then the actual tax component data entered through. The one with the tax component, as you can see there, it's automatically linked the document to that as well, and that'll automatically then be correctly filed in terms of the work paper screen there as well. So this one here is ability to split documents. So again, if we're looking through with our document screen, so this is again something that we released earlier in the year, but we're finding a lot of firms are not aware of. So a lot of our Smart Docs features work by extracting documents like you just saw before from a particular document. But what the system really requires is those documents to be saved within Simple Fund 360 as individual documents. So we need those as individual files by investments or individual ones altogether. But let's say you've received a whole bunch of documents from your client and you've scanned those in, and then you need to actually then physically process them or physically upload them into Simple Fund 360. So we offer an ability now to split documents into multiple documents. So let's say you've received a whole bunch of documents for the client, you've scanned those in as one file there into Simple Fund 360. So I can either email these in here or I can upload them in regardless of how I'd like to do these. I then click through on that particular document. Okay, and you can see for this document, there's a whole bunch of different ones there. So I can see there's an accounting invoice, there's some dividend statements, there's a rental statement, etc. So different ones that's gone through. So up on the left-hand side here is the ability there to now split documents. So what will go through, and you can see there on the right-hand side, is actually extract the documents based on how the AI determines each document is. So in this case, I think most of mine are all single pages, which you can see there on the right hand side, but if there are double pages, multiple pages, it will pick that up. You can also edit this information on the right hand side, change it accordingly. It'll give the naming convention at the moment is based on the original file name, and then it will show which actually type of document it is once it's actually extracted that out. And obviously go through and then split that out accordingly. So go through and actually split that, and that'll then grab those documents, split those into individual documents there on the document screen, which each of those will then be processed by our SmartDoc screen through as well. Cool. So last one, there is not really a feature within SimpleFun 360, but it's something our training and documentation team ran at the end of September, as you can see there, early October. And they did an education week where there was a whole series of webinars that provided education around obviously features within SimpleFun 360 and Simple Invest 360. So all of these were recorded and are available there on our YouTube channel. So if you go to BGL's YouTube channel and then go under playlist, you'll see a playlist which you can see there on screen, which is BGL Education 2024. And all the recordings for those particular webinars are available there and they can be viewed there at any given time. So I suppose if you're needing further, your team members or staff are requiring further education around any of BGL's products, it's a great resource because those are all up to date, latest recordings, and they are covering all three products from CAS 360, SimpleFun 360, and Simple Invest 360. So it's a great way to keep up your knowledge and work your way through there. Okay, I'll pass over to Aaron now.
Thanks, Jevan. Just whilst you're doing that, I should also note that the very first session we ran as Education Week was on our Smarter SMSF courses. So both our Foundations and Essentials course, which you can access via the BGL Learning channel as well. So give that a little plug in there as well. If people are looking at the education, you can see how you can access those courses from within the Learning channel. All right. Let me get going. Yep. Okay. So perfect. So what I wanted to touch on today, and probably taking a little bit of the theme of what Jevan was saying around, there hasn't been a lot of activity, but really making sure that you are acutely aware of what's happening within the SMSF industry at the moment. And having just recently presented in a few states at the SMSF Advisor Tech Strategy Day, Division 296 tax is still the big ticket item that many of our SMSF clients really want to know what is actually happening with these laws. It has been going on for some time now, and we are getting to the pointy end of decisions being made whether this will become law or not. So what we have, by way of background, is our Treasury Laws Amendment Better Targeted Super Concessions Bill, and that bill went into Parliament nearly 12 months ago, and the concept was naturally introduced around February of 2023. What this is going to do is apply a 15% tax imposed on the individual, and that individual has to have a total superannuation balance of greater than $3 million or more. Now, we have had these laws basically go into Parliament, into the House of Reps, up to the Senate, into a Senate review. Ultimately, it got passed without amendment, went back to the House. The House, in particular, the Teals, tried to see a number of amendments go through as well. But only in the past 3 or so weeks have we now seen this bill finally have its third and final reading and now moves back to the Senate. So we are literally, as I said, at the pointy end of the decision-making process now, because if it passes the Senate, then it will become law from the 1st of July 2025. Now, whilst all this has been going on, we've seen a number of draft regulations that have been released by Treasury. Most of this relates to what we refer to as defined benefit interests, so how these need to be valued in the context of the total superannuation balance definition For example, the Prime Minister, he has an old defined benefit. He's one of 5 or 6 parliamentarians that need to have a value determined each and every year to work out what level of Division 296 tax would apply in respect to his superannuation interest. At the same time, and I did touch on this in our last update earlier this month, we have now seen draft regulations for SMSF clients where they have defined benefits, so lifetime complying, lifetime life expectancy pensions, and also market-linked pensions, to look to exit the system as a result of these draft regulations. Now, the government appears to be wedding the finalisation of those regulations to these Division 296 tax laws. The submissions that have been made have requested that that not be the case, but we will obviously need to wait and see. But they are regulations, not bills, that need to go through both houses. So we are now at the point in time where we have moved right through this journey so far. And if it feels like it's been a long time, it's probably because it is. So I'm not going to bore you with the detail in here, but we are now at a point where we need to understand what is happening in Parliament between now and Christmas, and then ultimately when we get to an election, which we know will need to occur by no later than the 17th of May. So what we do know now is that we have only 8 sitting days left for the Senate. And you can see those marked in blue on the calendar here. And what the government need is 39 yeses, or A's as they're known, in the Senate to get this law through. So the Labor Party have 25, and therefore they need another 14. Now, they have already negotiated with the Greens the fact that they introduced superannuation on paid parental leave. So that was announced in the federal budget, and that bill has ultimately gone through with no major concerns. So then what happens is we get down to 3 other senators, so crossbench senators ultimately, and therefore, do they have those 3? Now, as we understand it, they don't have the 3 that they would need, and therefore, this is where the conjecture starts to get created as to whether these laws are going to go through or not. But one thing we all know is that what happens in the halls of Canberra can very quickly change the outcomes of what we may understand is occurring and then what ultimately does occur. And I reference, for example, the stage 3 tax cuts, where the federal government for a long period of time said there were not going to be any changes. And then we did then finally see those changes come through. And therefore, all of us ultimately are now the recipient of those changes that took effect from the 1st of July. So there are only 8 days before they close for Christmas. What we also know now is, because the Prime Minister's office has released a draft sitting calendar for next year, is that they have now dropped in here, interestingly, a budget date of Tuesday, the 25th of March. So similarly to what we saw with the coalition prior to the previous election, they are going to produce a federal budget and then go and call an election, which will then likely mean that we will have a polling day, i.e. election day of the 17th of May, which is the last day there. Now, what is also interesting in here is if you look at the blue in February, it only allows us for a further additional 7 sitting days to resolve any outstanding legislation before the government moves into caretaker mode. So 8 plus 7, the last time I counted, added to 15 days. So the government has 15 days to get this law through. So at this point in time, we don't know whether it is on the agenda for that next sitting period. We will get that information on the Prime Minister's site in the upcoming days, because obviously that is about 10 or so days away before they actually sit. So we will watch this space with great interest and naturally keep people up to speed with what is happening there. If we don't see it in this side, then we are down to 7 days thereafter. So that's really just what I wanted to share there. The other thing that we've done at Smarter SMSF, and this has come off a number of requests that we've had from our clients, is the use of a CSV import function. So we naturally have our integrations with BGL is a good example, but we do have a range of clients that may be with financial planning software. They may use CRMs like a HubSpot, or Salesforces and those sorts of things, where they capture data as their source of truth within their client base, and they then want to be able to bring that information in, either potentially to establish funds, and we spoke about that earlier as part of the Macquarie CMA process, but equally, there'll be circumstances where you want to be able to do trust deed upgrades, and you can use your Simple Fund 360 data to either do an integration and connect and do that order one-on-one, but equally now this will allow you to go through and do bulk order upgrades, and therefore exporting that data out of Simple Fund 360. If it was, say, 20 funds, we will in essence enable you to do those 20 orders in one go, pick up the saved order, and then go through and complete that. Now, we've created a number of sample files to be able to auto map that process. Equally, having a chat to Jeevan and the team about, again, streamlining this even further out of Simple Fund 360. But most importantly, you can save templates. So if you are mapping out of a specific piece of software, you'll do that one-time mapping, and then it's saved, and then you'll apply that template each and every time thereafter. So if you are doing a single row import, naturally it's going to take you to the form. If you're doing a bulk upload, then it will create those multiple saved orders. Now, we ran a session on this recently as part of our quarterly update that we do. So similarly to Jeevan said before, you can go to our BGL our YouTube channel, I should say, to be able to have a look at what we've done around that topic. But I just wanted to share a couple of case studies that we have with members that are using this. So one is a financial planning business that has a planning and accounting. So they do all their original data capture within Xplan, and then therefore the advice process happens in there, and then the fund gets established. So what they're doing is they can bring that data out of Xplan, and then in that captured CSV file, you then can import the information into the corporate trustee order form, and then all of the information to establish that special purpose trustee allows for that to occur. It maps the CSV, imports the data, and away you go. Now, from there, they then can use our workflow or doc flow to then go through, and the data from the company will move into the new fund order. And then the new fund order, once those documents are generated, you can then utilize our ABN TFN that we have to undertake that process as well. And then as part of that journey going through this, you not only have the ability to do the push up into CAS 360 for the company, you can also do the same with Simple Fund 360 as well. So you can not only send the fund information up, you can send the documents up there as well. And then once you've had the ABN issued, you can push the ABN into Simple Fund 360 as well. Then taking you on to that Macquarie bank account application as the example that we spoke about earlier too. The other side that we see being used extensively, again, is looking at this around a firm that is doing multiple deed upgrades. So again, we have an ability for someone to be able to create an export file from their information in Simple Fund 360 that captures what we need in the form to be able to do that deed upgrade. So fund info, trustee member, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we can map that information from that export file and then ultimately load that into our CSV import, and then go through and review and submit that information. Because we're creating multiple saved orders, we then would go through and undertake that review of that data. And then if you're wanting to have that legal review, you can have that legal review as part of the process. Ultimately, once that order has been generated, in the completed orders, you'll then have the ability to send that document back into Simple Fund 360, and you can see the screen at the bottom there. So once that data goes in, it's in essence just pushing that information up. And if you want to add some additional tags and user data or metadata into that, you can do that from within Simple Fund 360 as well. But what we're seeing from this is that if someone is taking, say, even 10 minutes in that process, if it's manually input, or even to the extent that you're using the integration with Simple Fund 360, if you have 50 funds and you're able to save, sort of 10 minutes as part of that process, then quite clearly the economics of the time saving become quite significant the more that you actually have as well. So they're two case studies that we've seen in the immediate term that not only were the demands that we had originally, but how we've seen some of our members actually do that in practice as well. So, Jeevan, I don't know whether it might be just worthwhile explaining the export, how people can kind of grab some of that information out of Simple Fund 360 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so jumping back into Simple Fund 360. Okay, so I'll go back here to the actually, first of all, what I'll do is go look at something on a fund level. So a couple of things here is you'll see here on the fund dashboard, there is a function here to upload very quickly existing trust deed details. So you can obviously go through and update both initial trust deed and the variation of the deed. And
Yep.
very similar that you can go through, and obviously that relevant information is shown down below here, and very similar that you can go through and do the same thing here. So in terms of the history, in terms of when the deed was last modified, etc., you can input all the information into there if you aren't utilizing that already. The benefit of that is when you're coming through here into the inside screen, so in terms of the insights dashboard, we do have a filter down below here, which is trust deed last modified, where you can actually go through and actually filter based on a date range. So let's say you wanted to just update any trust deeds older than 5 years, obviously without having the relevant trust deed details there on the onto the fund details screen, you can't obviously actually use these relevant filters. But on a similar basis, you can see any of the ones that have been obviously don't have any information entered, to make sure you can use that as a checklist to actually go through and say, okay, these ones that haven't been entered, I now know that all these funds need to be updated. I need to grab those details and include them through there as well. But in terms of actually, I guess, exporting those details. So once you actually select that list, that could be all funds, it could be a group of funds. Our existing export you can do from up here. So download Excel, and then just select the entity one, and that'll actually export to Excel a list of all the SMSFs and some basic information that will help pre-fill. It doesn't at the moment have every single details that Smarter SMSF require, but we will go through and obviously update that in relevant time as well. So that's the quickest way to sort of get those lists out and the relevant information out there.
Yep. Yeah, and even if you've kind of got 70% of it, the fact that you can then populate some of that missing information to fast track what goes in, or equally as part of that import function, what you would do is just map what you've got there, and then as you work through the saved order form, it would then allow you to just simply fill in the gaps that you have as part of that ordering process. Because things like, for example, whether you want legal review as part of that process is something that you aren't incorporating into the CSV import. It's something that you need to step through and include yourself, because it would require documentation to be uploaded for that legal review to occur.
Absolutely. Cool. So going to question times now.
So, Jeevan, I might answer so Leah has asked there just about opening the bank account. Is this financial advice? So that I think the main thing to note here, and I'm talking probably from the administrators and stuff, is that in a lot of instances, the decision to do that would maybe sit in some sort of data capture when you're setting up the fund. So if you're working with a financial advisor, if you're an administrator and you might be getting the instructions, so an execution, in a lot of instances, what you find is that there is some sort of authorization to go through that process. So I think, yes, whilst you do, in a lot of instances when it comes to SMSS, we need to be careful about where the line is. In a lot of instances, what is happening there is that the ability to set up that Macquarie account has been based upon some form of instruction that has come from the client to be able to do so.
Exactly right. And I think where I've seen other firms do that, and it's not an area I'm an expert in, so don't probably quote me on this, but it's rather than recommending it as a financial product, it's stating that this product is an option available there, and it
Yep.
saves in terms of administration, time costs and etc. And if they'd like to proceed, then they could please action it.
Yeah, and that happens. You do see firms out there that, especially those administrators that provide a specific offering, and the offering may be, well, you have to use this broker and you use this account, and if you use those, then this is the price you actually pay. But there's no recommendation of that. It's just that if you want that, then you're agreeing to that, and therefore you're authorizing us to actually proceed on that basis. So that there is, in essence, a much greater focus on the execution there that is being provided, as opposed to making a fully blown recommendation around the establishment of the fund and the investment strategy and so forth, which naturally falls under the auspices of someone with an AFSL, or is an authorized rep of an AFSL.
And we do have I was going to say, from a BGL perspective, we do have an upcoming webinar with Macquarie that we go, I think, through in a lot more detail regarding this. So we'll obviously include links once they are available. But that I think that's off the top of my head towards the end of November in terms of that
Yep.
webinar. We had a bunch of questions come through around transaction recode, which the team have answered, but I'll just read out loud for others. Are you able to, when you do recode a transaction, does it go through and update the matching rules? At the moment, no, it doesn't. So you will need to go into the transaction rule screen and update there accordingly. It is something we are looking, though, in the future, of providing the ability to, I suppose, automate that bit a bit further. There was another one. Can you change between account types? So, for the example, there was an asset account through to an expense account. At the moment, the answer is no, but it is something, again, we're looking at in the future to go through and do there accordingly. There was a question there that, do we have the ability to annotate documents? So at the moment, we don't have the ability there to annotate documents, but it is something on our sort of, I guess, roadmap, and we are hoping to have that at some point in time in the near future. So I don't have an exact date on that, so I'm not going to go through and do that accordingly. Question there about uploading documents or tax statements with the distribution rec screen. Does it save to work papers? Yes, so that will be, it actually is saved both against the transaction, and then will automatically then go into the relevant work papers, which will be obviously the distributions as well. You can obviously upload onto the work paper screen, you can upload additional documents out there and go through that accordingly. Another question around the tax automation is, are wraps and platforms supported? So again, no, this is a project the team actually has started to look into and seeing, is this possible? So at the moment, obviously, there's a lot of sort of different formats in terms of different documents, a lot of details, but we'll go through and go through that accordingly. Cool. So the question there about the Macquarie account opening, is there any way we can get the automatic feed done? So yes, the actual feed is part of the process. So there is a question when the email is sent to the clients. There is a question which is ticked by default, and it says that they authorize BGL to receive a data feed. So it's basically an electronic version of the data feed. If the trustees do untick that option, obviously the data feed won't go through, but that option is enabled by default. And obviously once the actual account is opened, and if it's a new SMSF and the rollovers have received, etc., then the transactions will automatically come through there accordingly. And probably the last question there is about the email address there for the beta. So I think that was going back. So for the transaction recode, it's on the bottom of the screen there, which I'll allow just for a second. But it looks like there's, I think apart from that, there's no other questions. So makes our job easy for once, Aaron.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
All questions for you today, which is much better.
That's right. Normally it's the opposite, I think. So
Yeah, it is.
So thank you everyone for attending. So as mentioned earlier, a recording for today's webinar will be sent to everyone. And if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to send them to either myself or Aaron after today. So Aaron, thank you again.
Excellent. Pleasure, mate. Good to see you.
You too. Okay. Bye everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.